This video is sponsored by Knuckles0x, Crimson Manifesto, and Jopi. We resume in the midst of the strategy meeting being held by the current version of the Dragon Team with all its new Saiyan recruits and Kami. The stakes clearly laid out in such a way that it is obvious to everyone their short-earned peace is now officially over, and that the bigger bad they've all been looking to is now going to rear its head. The reactions to this are of course varied, with Vegeta in particular seeming a bit pleased, if not self-assured about this outcome, while Nappa, Raditz, and Goku a bit more measurably seem anxious to get into the action. Meanwhile, the humans, Kami, and Piccolo feel no need to worry over their planet. Even Frieza's so-called elite currently headed their way were small fries, and having dug around the Saiyans' brains, they're forewarned about figures as impressive as the Ginyu Force, whom at the least the Earthlings are supposedly comparable to, according to their estimates at least. Sure, there may be a challenge, but even they certainly weren't Frieza himself, whom everyone is still under the impression Piccolo, and more so Gohan, can beat easily on their own. Since they have at least some valuable forewarning, this gives them time to come up with a unified plan, though it needs to be done quickly, as the Saiyans are eager to test their training and earn their keep here on Earth. So Kami reminds everyone to remain calm and make sure they make the most of these opportunities. First and foremost, reminding his veteran fighters they still have their secret weapon, with all of them at least having 1 year's worth of access to the time chamber still, should it be necessary, that is. Speaking of opportunities, Nappa asks if Master Chaozu could hypnotize these guys too, with the psychic smugly boasting the feat should be even easier than the last time, especially once the invaders get a bit closer, with this becoming another viable option. Additionally, upon closer assessment of their power levels, there's really only one among the 5 or so incoming that's even that impressive, which Vegeta quickly identifies as an old stalker and self-proclaimed rival, while Nappa agrees the fishy guy has always had a weird obsession with Vegeta, so it's honestly a bit tempting for him to take him on too. So with some of their wisest options laid out, what do? Thankfully, Goku has an answer, though it's a radically different route. He wants to take the fight to this Frieza guy, to which Vegeta agrees, while Yamcha reveals Bulma's been working on that gravity thing for Goku, and even mentioned how it could be applied to space travel, since she's recovered the attack pod of Goku, as well as brought Vegeta and Nappa to Capsule Corp for safekeeping with their help, meaning a viable spaceship is actually fairly well along. Admittedly, the idea to travel and train at the same time is also a lure, especially to the Saiyans, and seeing this and knowing it would please Bulma, Yamcha suggests they could possibly speed that process up if they keep the incoming attack pods intact as well, since they seem to be a bit higher end. Piccolo as well is intrigued to see this opponent his new student Vegeta is so fixated on, and if things involve Planet Namek, he'd like to explore, and so backing Goku's play, he states the team will need to form 2 separate forces, one to strike out and try to help the Namekians, and the other to stay here on Earth, just in case any more of Frieza's men slither over. Making contact telepathically, King Kai tries to forbid this, but even Kami is of the opinion that if there is a possibility of someone evil using the Dragon Balls, and worse, a set stronger than their own, then they should try to do what they can to stop it, even if it is risky, especially if they have the power to. The Kaio is of course nervous about this, but he can see the point, and this is a pretty good group. Honestly, if they couldn't stop Frieza, who would? And so the 4 pure Saiyans and Piccolo are of course locked in for the journey into space, though there is surprisingly an additional member, as Chaozu declares he too would like to go, stating he needs to make sure Mr. Tien's first student doesn't wind up dead, while Nappa feels that with the Esper and Tien along, their victory is assured, enjoying a hearty laugh and excitement as they would form a mighty team of 7 to venture off into the stars. Tien is surprisingly fine with this, though corrects them to 6, stating he thinks Chaozu has proven he can handle more on his own now, and simply asking Nappa to be sure to train hard and watch Chaozu's back all the same. As the big brute of course takes pride in his ability as a protector, he assures Tien he'll make sure Lord Chaozu returns without a scratch, and so as a result of the strike team being chosen so easily, the likes of Tien, Krillin, Yamcha, Yajirobe, Master Roshi, and Gohan all remain on Earth in order to shore up their own defenses, and offer any support if needed, with everyone feeling pretty confident and laid back about this. There isn't really a need to cling on to Goku as their one greatest protector anymore, since you kinda have the proverbial weapon of mass destruction that is Son Gohan, in a way, freeing Goku up to take the next step on his journey and grow ever stronger. For now though, the incoming threat does have to be dealt with. A task Vegeta and the rest of the Saiyans are also more than eager to carry out, wanting to test themselves against whatever scouts Frieza is sent along with Qui, to either confirm their deaths or do them in themselves for desertion. However, before he goes, the prince states he'd actually like a wish from the oh-so-powerful god of Earth in exchange for doing this subtly and keeping the populace safe. Seeing as they still aren't allowed access to the dragon itself, Vegeta is cunning enough to try asking the creator to grant his wish. At this idea being brought up, Nappa and Raditz are quickly intrigued themselves, wondering if Kami would honor this request, and to their shock, the god actually sighs and agrees it's the least he could do in light of their behavior so far, asking what they all want. As the most short-sighted, Nappa simply makes a request for a ton of a fried rice dish Lord Chaozu had gotten Moto, Popo slip dropping that he could grant that wish by just whipping some up for dinner, earning a few chuckles from the group as Kami looks to Raditz, whom after mulling it over for a while, requested they could simply use the Dragon Balls here on Earth to stop the incoming scouts and freeze on a single wish. However, upon learning why this can't happen via Kami's limitations, he relents and decides he'll simply stow his wish from the god for later. A pragmatic decision the old Namekian can respect. expect, quickly coming to view Raditz as one of their most valuable strategists. Finally, Vegeta confidently states his wish, as learning of the real secret of the human Z-Fighter's growth in between Raditz's arrival and that of his and Nappa's, thus laying out the fruits of his slight sleuthing into the matter, having spent so much time around Piccolo and Kami, as well as here on the lookout now. He was indeed able to piece together that such growth is not possible in under a year without some kind of outside force. Nappa and Raditz's experience and growth under their individual human masters also reflected this fact, and so as a sign to their truly making peace, he'd like to know of this other method. To this end, Piccolo reasons he too can trust the prince, having at least recognized his ambition was never really about Earth itself, as all his current goals inevitably lead back to defeating Frieza, motivating him as one also labeled as evil to vouch for their new allies to be let in on things. Thus, the Saiyans are informed of the truth about the time chamber, now making them aware of the quickest and easiest route to a power-up they have at their disposal, a way to speed through the training the three Saiyans have just been introduced to. However, to just about everyone's shock but Goku's, they don't seem all that interested in the room. More so shocked that number 1, such a thing is also real, but number 2, are impressed their new allies endured such a trial to take them on. It's honestly kind of flattering, you know, and it gives them some extra confidence, since that kind of training could be a great last resort someday if they ever really need it, or find some kind of plateau they gotta get over. But for now, like Goku, they want to try catching up in their own ways, by trying to follow the new paths they discovered at least. With this done and their curiosity satisfied, the Saiyans and Goku ask Chaozu where these new invaders are set to land, with him predicting the land zone to be a populated city, and then influencing it to be a nearby wasteland for simplicity and safety's sake, and giving the Saiyans a timeline of a day and 3 hours to be there for their fight, since he assumes they mean to send a message when they do. In this short time, Bulma and Dr. Breeze begin to ramp up their production speed, excited for the new parts they're set to get from what are supposedly more advanced ships. Meanwhile, entering the atmosphere of this planet's Earth, Kui has been given a sizable squad of 4 men with power levels about 2,000 or higher, with orders to confirm Prince Vegeta's death no matter what. Though considering how boring the planet seemed from entry, this is more likely to be a sluggish search and destroy mission. However, to his great joy, as they begin their landing sequence, the entire squadron scouters go off, denoting a power level of 18,000 directly in front of their landing zone, a few smaller powers accompanying it. Seems like Vegeta's come to meet them. Is it possible he simply got stranded on this rock? Oh, that's just too good. How fittingly twisted of an end for the prince, to be unfairly shot down due to ill circumstances rather than actual treachery. As he and his men disembark and step up to meet with Vegeta and those with him, Kui simply greets his best buddy and expresses how much he missed him over the last half rotation, a sentiment which Vegeta very weirdly returns, smiling in a genuinely gleeful way the fishy alien has never seen, as he says that he and his Saiyan brethren, excluding Kakarot that is, have oh so longed for the day that they re-establish contact with Lord Frieza and their allies, a statement which causes the 3 Saiyans casually standing behind Vegeta to chuckle smugly. Wait, why are there 4 Saiyans now? Some really did get away? Making sure he turns the gain of the receiver on his scouter up so Lord Frieza gets word of this, Kui very deliberately vocally confirms they were able to find and recruit that extra Saiyan they spoke of. That's good, but what's their excuse for getting stranded here and not completing their last assigned mission? In response, Vegeta laughs, noticing Kui actually slipped up and revealed that Saiyans had indeed been spied on for that last plan of theirs. They never discussed going to get Kakarot with any officials, but he decides not to hold it against Kui since he's already cooked, smugly saying their excuse is that they're no longer working for Frieza. There's a moment of visible shock in the soldiers, as such a statement out loud is beyond suicide. It's enough to ensure your planet is reduced to space dust, but then they suppose in that department, these monkeys have nothing to lose. Regaining his composure, Kui signals for his men to take on Vegeta's cronies, while he handles the top banana. Though as the Frieza Force soldiers are about to learn, this is easier said than done. Figuring Nappa must be the weakest due to appearing older than his allies, one of the goons raises their arm to blast at him and wound the elderly. Though having vastly improved his Bokujutsu, or flight, under Tien's ki control training, the massive Saiyan closes the distance between himself and this soldier so fast that he doesn't actually feel as Nappa's armbreaker technique severs the offending limb before he flicks his fingers into the man's chest with the force of a double-barrel shotgun, folding him over and sending him flying back, barely clinging to life, while Nappa subsequently swipes his scouter, equipping it to his head as part of their plan. Reacting to this with shock, the man's allies try to gang up on the brute, that is until Raditz tells them to keep their eye on the birdie, appearing behind one of them and stealing his scouter before simply smacking away using his tail. The last 2 men only have time to recognize that they are indeed the last 2, as in the next instant, Goku simply walks between them and flares his ki, blowing them both away and unconscious from the force of it, just narrowly swiping a scouter of his own while leaving the last one to be stepped on, subsequently needing a bit of help from Raditz to equip it. This display of power leaves Kui frozen in shock, having never imagined his men could be so soundly defeated by the Saiyans, while Vegeta in contrast doesn't speed blitz the scummy alien, instead making him watch in horror as he begins to let his power climb, more and more while charging his Gallic gun. In his final moments, all Kui feels is fear, realizing at last that Vegeta is well go beyond his pay grade, with this causing the fish-faced alien to try and run. But just as quickly as he tensed his power, Vegeta relaxes it, condensing it into a super concentrated eye beam that pierces Queen's heart with ease, seeing him call out to Lord Frieza with his dying breath, as Vegeta claims his scouter for his own. He then asks the other Saiyans to sound off into their scouters while gloating that he knows Frieza is listening personally by now. For a moment, there is no response, until a smug chuckle fills their ears, which 3 of the 4 recognize as the Emperor, purring in predatory delight at the entertainment, while asking if Vegeta is really serious about this. Without hesitation, the Prince replies he most certainly is, insisting he leaves this dirtball and Namek alone, since they're coming for him in due time. Then as one, the Saiyans destroy their scouters and make way with their true spoils of victory, the high-end attack pods, to Capsule Corp, in order to implement Stage 2 of their plan. Following this, a fairly tense week or so passes, in which the Saiyans ramp up their training even further with their masters, while also still using the pendulum room to get some of their pent-up energy out as they wait. Thankfully, with all this great stolen Frieza Force tech to reverse engineer, a far more effective ship is able to be built, and at a slightly faster rate than in canon, not to mention super quick, super durable, and capable of unleashing harsher gravity for their training purposes. The act of saying goodbye is a bit strange for some, since this dangerous journey is voluntary, with the likes of Chi-Chi of course being upset and scared to lose Goku so soon after he returned home. But she can understand this must be done at some point, so why put off tomorrow what can be done today? It's ultimately being something that could keep Gohan safe and ensure his peaceful future. Plus, with Piccolo gone for a while, she can get him to totally focus on his study. While the Saiyans are of course pretty new to sentiment, but when all is said and done, the team of Piccolo, Chaozu, Son Goku, Vegeta, Raditz, and Nappa blast off towards planet Namek, intent on putting an end to Frieza as they go and getting right into the swing of things by breaking into the ship for training. Now, finally, as the Saiyans begin wagering their stronger constitution and adaptability, do we see them beginning to take the edge on those they initially had lots of trouble with. This first grueling day being evidence of that, and seeing Chaozu quickly forced to reinforce his body with his psychic energy to withstand gravity only twice that of the time chambers at 20 Gs. It serves as a good warm-up setting for everyone else, but for Chaozu, it's a bit humbling to put in some real effort after a year nearly not doing so. And by the time the Saiyans start pushing for double and above that in the hours to come, he quickly has to tap out and just leave Piccolo and the Saiyans to it. Though in fairness to the Saiyans, they are doing whatever they can to have Piccolo take them more seriously in these spars of theirs, with it feeling strictly like he's training them more so than training with them. First and foremost, trying to get them to break a similar limit as Gohan, and get them on an even playing field as him. But the 4 don't grow and adapt at the exact same rate as him, this itself serving as stark proof that the hybrid has more potential than all of them combined. However, this doesn't mean Chaozu can't contribute anything. Think about what I just said. He was reinforcing himself to withstand all that pressure and force, as well as his own fatigue, pushing beyond his very limits to the point he almost made it to 100 Gs with the group, though simply withstanding 75 took the remainder of his energy. But beyond this, could he do this kind of enhancement for others? Could this be a way to not only increase the effectiveness of this training, but maybe, just maybe, do something that could only work for the Saiyans? Actually, for this group they have right here. Super special training that only he could facilitate. A way he individually could finally pay Goku back for putting everything on the line for him and protecting the world, making it possible for him to return to life. And all after he was only ever a jerk to the guy. Speaking of, even though he's had to step back, Piccolo takes notice of Chaozu's efforts to keep up, and feeling his nurturing spirit having developed, begins doing what he can to patch Chaozu up, as ironic as that is. Always willing to give him more than enough energy to replenish his ki when they finally take breaks, and even meditating with him to help him recover his mental energy. In turn, also offering Chaozu the support he needs to begin this radical training. So in spite of the danger of mixing the strain of gravity training and high-level feats of psychic power, the expert begins to experiment, first focusing on reinforcing Nappa. And when this allows him as the oldest and weakest Saiyan in the group to fight longer and stronger against Piccolo, even at the harsher Gs at the cost of a lot of his strain fatigue transferring to Chaozu, he strengthens his resolve like Mr. Tien would, gladly opening himself up to this peril to continue honing this new ability. Until around the 3rd day of Chaozu's special hyperbolic gravity training, he's able to confidently reinforce all 4 Saiyans at once, allowing them to begin adapting to Piccolo's power far quicker and make more steady gains, while mastering the new and old tricks they either got or began to perfect and evolve on Earth. In the process, overwhelming themselves with their own evolution, as each day sees them left utterly exhausted and in pain, but also seeing drastic growth, and a feeling like their sense of self and understanding of each other is growing just as immensely. This has the secondary benefit of strengthening their cohesion when they actually fight together, as well as the tertiary effect of the group being able to conserve their sensu beings a lot better, keeping a grand total of 4, which actually end up getting prioritized to go to Chaozu, Raditz, Goku, and Vegeta. Nappa really is taking these bodyguard duties seriously, so if one of his allies can make it out at the cost of his own life, he's actually fine with that. And though from this intense training they still wind up hungry and very tired, having to rely more on their regular food provisions and responsible rest cycles to replenish their strength, their struggle is repaid with that extra boost psychically, and thus giving them an extra mental and spiritual power up to will their way through it and obtain truly limit-breaking power on the other side. Power that puts even the Earthlings and Frieza's most elite soldiers to shame, with even Chaozu growing to the point to confidently claim the title of strongest Earthling. Vegeta confidently noting that if they did this for long enough, he could surely surpass Piccolo and Gohan, which of course sparks some heated debate, but it would have to be a topic for later, as what's better is this souped up ship ship has gotten in the planet Namek extremely quickly, hence the ferocity with which they approach their training, meaning that when they arrive at the planet Namek, they are met by only a few minor waves of Frieza Force scouts meant to do their best in mapping out the civilizations of the planet before Frieza makes landfall and begins the true campaign. This gives the Saiyans another day or so to rest and ready themselves, after helping the locals drive off these invaders, making at first very wary friendships, and this would of course eventually lead to meeting the Grand Elder. And seeing as these are allies with the potential threat incoming, this presents an obvious questions-less opportunity. But actually, I think a very fun twist could be set up that somewhat sees the haste our heroes have been able to move with so far backfire on them here. While the 3 former Frieza Force members certainly mean well now and are trying out the teachings of their new benefactors, I still think there should be some lingering bits of doubt even now. And from that doubt can spring all forms of emotions that Saiyans haven't been able to adequately express or deal with properly because they've been trailing behind said benefactors, so the power dynamics were kinda shifted drastically. There's been a lot on their plates, a lot of trying to power up and soul searching and finding themselves and all that kind of stuff. Sure, they were treated kindly, but these were still 3 of the last bastions of old Saiyan culture and sensibilities. That won't die out in a day, 6 months, or maybe even ever. And to this end, for the moment at least, I think Guru would have a genuinely good reason not to offer to awaken Raditz, Vegeta, or Nappa's potential. I mean, the big bald one, interestingly enough, seems to be a bit farther along this new path than either of his compatriots, however, but that's something the old Namekian can easily recognize as the results of a greater deal of experience and history down that old path. As for the Namekian they brought with them, he is interesting, possessing a soul that exhibits the signs of complete, or at the very least, near complete purification, having replaced a great deal of hatred thanks to a deep and abiding love for a dear friend and the world he inhabits, simply living his days out peacefully, studying and playing. However, it's clear this being still values its own history and reputation, and thus has created a mask that has held him back, not allowing him to truly stand beside that dear friend as a true equal the way he once wished. So through this insight, Piccolo is deemed worthy, partially because Nail would definitely take an interest in this version of Piccolo, partially because of his strength, yes, but also because I think he would be able to just openly and immediately admire this version of the character. Something I usually see in what ifs that allow Piccolo to go to Namek is that he either ends up not being changed very much or being changed very drastically, but Nail's reaction to him doesn't really get to change. In stories where Piccolo may have survived the battle with the Saiyans, but not developed much as a character yet, it's very common to see Nail have a negative reaction to him. And in stories where Piccolo has developed a lot more before they reach Namek, Nail in these contexts usually either kowtows to Piccolo as a superior, kind of like what you would see in my What If Piccolo Turned Good early series. I'm going to link that in the iCard for you, by the way. Or sometimes he'll have a more subdued reaction and Piccolo is just neutral enough to where he just seems like any other Namekian. All these interpretations are completely valid, but they do kind of miss one thing, and that being that Nail is a kindred spirit to Piccolo, and the way he has a deep and wide love for all his siblings of their planet, young and old, is something Piccolo can probably appreciate. Even if this was 2 years ago for him now, he would have weighed this away as dread and sentiment. But you know, it kind of makes him realize in a way, Gohan is like his own brother, more so than just his student, leading to a little epiphany that deepens his bond with Gohan, and now Nail. This just seems like a fun opportunity to try something different with Piccolo and Nail as 2 characters that isn't just fusing them together and leaving it there, since in a way this is another part of Namekians not typically explored in Dragon Ball or its what ifs. If you think about it for long enough, Namekians as communal as they do live are likely to do some form of pair bonding, even if they don't do things like marry each other or only bond with one other Namekian for life. And I think that's too sweet an opportunity not to explore it in some way. Though one way in which I think would be kind of interesting is meditation dates, as it were. You know, basically just relaxing and meditating together. But with a Namekian who is also the attendant to the guardian of the planet, it means they technically have Guru there as a chaperone. We're likely the sweetest of moments that would be very embarrassing for Nail. Nail, have you offered your date a glass of water yet? You all will no doubt muster up a ton of those in the comments. Even so, this means really only Piccolo, of course Son Goku with his pure heart, and Chaozu would be offered the potential unlock outright, with Guru even waiting until there is a good opportunity to call these 3 alone to seek their counsel on this potential gift of his. Chaozu is first and foremost interested and open to this, having just concluded he'd achieved his full potential on his own. But if he can climb even higher to keep helping Mr. Tien, Mr. Nappa, Goku, and the others, he's 100% down, even if someone with an antiquated sense of pride might look down on how he does so. While Piccolo, after his bonding with Nail and Guru, and resolution to better come into his own, rather than living for the sake of King Piccolo, is also open to this. But following the same promise to himself he made, Goku refuses, wanting to maintain the climb he's making and expressing a desire to surpass the likes of those still ahead of him, and those who paved the way for him to get here. As such, the deed is done on Chaozu and Piccolo, with the 3 warriors agreeing to keep this one on the down low for the sake of their allies' feelings. However, with their preparations done, their days of rest are also over, and Lord Frieza has finally arrived, using his usual theatrics to stress his military's advantage in sheer numbers and technological prowess. Since with the scouts having encountered the Saiyans on both Earth and Namek now, Frieza is no longer taking Vegeta Vegeta's rebellion as a mere joke, and so has come with a sizable number more men to throw at the inhabitants of planet Namek and their protectors than he would in canon. As this is happening, Piccolo, Nail, and the other warrior Namekians have committed to evacuating the 100 or so Namekians to the other side of the planet, along with the Dragon Balls, allowing them to pretty much post up and be ready for anything. While Piccolo could certainly get involved and wipe Frieza out in one go, this isn't his fight. And beyond that, he now knows that violence should not be his first option either. Meanwhile, Chaozu decides to stick close enough to directly view the battle out of curiosity, doing a marvelous job of going unnoticed, since his power is already extremely hard to read, even without the dependence of a scouter. And using this in his tiny frame and all this chaos means he can slip in and out extremely easily, allowing Chaozu to work some pretty great magic and crowd control, and thus seeing the Saiyans get really good bang for their buck from their attacks, since everyone is hitting crowds of subtly influenced soldiers as they decide to group up for mass KOs. Unaware they are under an army-wide hypnosis. Having been forewarned of the monkey's presence and power, Frieza's invading army is more than 10 times its original size, mostly to account for their pesky giant monkey forms, which they will surely invoke at the first chance they get, being the primitive brutes they are. But even so, this doesn't actually seem to phase the Saiyans, with their base forms being more than enough. Since touching down on planet Namek and the Frieza Force beginning their campaign for the Namekian Dragon Balls, they've immediately hit roadblock after roadblock, like when a massive platoon of elites are all but torn through by Nappa and Vegeta, simply raring to eviscerate those who lord their status and favoritism over them endlessly, using a volcano explosion performed as a team to blast the soldiers into the air, and doing the same while pulling off a super Galley gun to do away with the fodder, in the midst of the ease, causing them to wonder where the likes of the Ginyu Force are in all this. Meanwhile, being aware of his deeds against Bardock and his crew, Goku and Raditz actually nearly end up fighting one another in their attempt to make Chidori pay for his sneakiness, inadvertently catching Zarbon and a few other unlucky men in their crosshairs. But in the end, Raditz ends up being the one to avenge their father, as he asserts it is his birthright, being the eldest, and one willing to actually ensure he killed the opponent, and thus launching through the rotund alien in an eerily similar manner to Gohan's headbutt and Goku's penetrating Uzaru fist, while Goku settles for taking out Frieza's second in command, appearing before the transformed Zarbon in a burst of speed, and devastating him with a one-inch punch that sends a shockwave flying through and knocking out hundreds of soldiers behind the monstrous commander. And thus, as his men fall like dominoes, Frieza appears, not very happy, now well aware the lizard tyrant can transform. Since Zarbon and a few other elites would have squealed about it in hopes of being spared, the Saiyans think they have a good way to make sure they all get a shot at the tyrant, and so begin trying to figure out a way to determine order, with Goku even excitedly getting a rock paper scissors tournament started. Frieza is of course enraged by the Ginyu-ness of this, and seeks to make an example of their insolence, almost catching the Saiyans off guard, as they get heated about if Raditz and Vegeta are playing fair by choosing their weapons so late after the round starts, with the squabble only coming to an end when they see a supernova being formed and thrown their way, even though all four Saiyans are mighty enough to repel this on their own, let alone as a unit. Chaozu doesn't allow them to, revealing himself now and using his abilities to attempt to reverse the technique onto the tyrant like Master Roshi would, telepathically grabbing the miniature sun and throwing it right back at Frieza. This nearly even succeeds at hitting the Emperor, if not for Frieza seeming to wisely abandon his chair and zipping to the side, lowering himself now out of pure curiosity as he activates his scouter, trying to get a read on this new creature. He bids it to identify itself, not aware of anything like this in the universe, wondering if it may be some kind of Cyberman, a monster or a pet, meant to be kept in one's pocket. However, hearing this disrespect before Chaozu can engage Frieza in a verbal joust himself, Nappa roars out that the would-be Emperor better show some respect, as he isn't dealing with the average space-traveling warrior anymore. That there is the one and only Lord Chaozu. But this is where we'll be leaving this story off for right now. Hey, just a quick off-the-cuff sign out here. I'm actually deciding to go ahead and cut this script now. I'm going to cut about 2,500 words or about 15 minutes off of what was originally going to be the full part 4. So while I know it's only going to fuel that this story is really what if Chaozu was the strongest Z-Fighter memes, this is probably just the best spot to leave her right here before we really get into the Frieza fight, and that way Frieza can kind of get a part to himself and thus the respect he deserves. We're also running extremely long, so this is going to be the first shot at a different way of doing the shoutouts for channel supporters. Basically choosing 5 of you guys at random per video to shout out instead of doing the entire list of nearly 100 now. So special shoutouts and thanks this time to Dirk Gooden, the Storybuster, Indigo Saturn 64, Luxu, and Tay. Thanks to these 5 and everyone else who directly supports the channel. Consider joining their ranks to get cool perks like this, early access to videos, sneak peeks, and projects exclusive to supporters. Do me a favor and like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for the views, and as always, take care of yourselves and the world around you. And be sure to go beyond plus ultra. And I'll see you guys next time.